Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all having a great day. Don't forget to leave a like, as it does help out the channel a lot. It helps out the channel's algorithm. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. There's, for some reason, a lot of debt news floating around. I don't know if it's just the season or if it's a trend that is going to continue trending within the news. For those of you who don't know, I mean, you all should at this point. The world is in a tremendous amount of debt, but now it's gotten to the point where things are actually quite wobbly. It was expected that we probably wouldn't see these levels of debt or problems that we're currently going through until sometime around the 2040s. These were the usual calculations when it came to, you might have heard before, Social Security and pensions running out across multiple different countries. People are living longer. People are absorbing more of the money from the system and having it for a longer time. You kind of understand. But 2020 and 2021 were very pivotal years, where the amount of money that was created and the levels of debt that were created were kind of like the tipping point. So heavily in the news, you might have also seen as well in the last couple of weeks, there was also a video recently where we were going over discussions from the Fed about lowering interest rates, and should they be lowering interest rates, and how is inflation looking? Because other countries around the world, even since around spring, even before spring, already had begun to try to lower their interest rates, and were already beginning to print money. This is why you're seeing a lot of news about the devaluation of the Japanese yen. But we've kind of gotten to, and I say this in the nicest way, we've kind of gotten to the point where something has to be done now, because later is not going to be an option. Like, that's not even a joke. We had something recently from Jerome, and this was one of the how I knew things were shaky. About a month ago, we had a statement from the head of the Fed, the people who print money in the United States, Jerome Powell. He said basically exactly what I'm saying, but like you never hear the people at the top of the pyramid tell everyone else that everything is shaky and not looking too good. He said right now we can kind of handle it. You have to print more money. You have to do, what's needed. But he said, like, going forward, the system can't and won't be able to sustain this anymore. So now we have the BIS, the Bank for International Statements. They're also in the news. The Bank for International Statements Annual Economic Report 2024, that was published at the end of June, is highlighting the significant risks posed by rising public debt levels across both advanced and emerging market economies. The amount of debt being taken out. So like I told you before, I watch a lot of documentaries or news reports, whatever pops up. The algorithm keeps giving me stuff. The amount of personal debt within the United States alone is skyrocketing. And I don't mean like, pumping in the 3, 4, 5%. No, it's not. Like, everyday normal people on average are getting $6,000 to like $10,000 extra dollars worth of debt yearly. And that's like the lower end of it. They were talking about other people and how they're choosing to basically live their best lives right now and get into as much debt as they can, because they simply don't see any way out of it in the first place. But this is also happening other places. When the stock market doesn't rise and these companies aren't posting profits, the next thing that they do is try to basically find a way for you to get into as much debt as possible over the course of a long period of time, so that they continue making this like drip of money from you every single month. And this is why we're getting more and more calls like lower the interest rates so that people are in less debt if they decide to take out debt through the interest rates. Interest rates are lower. It causes more money to flow into the market. It like relieves a lot of stress and pressure. But inflation isn't really going down because of the system and because of the constraints that have been going on since around the 1980s. And this is, this is what you get. The report stresses that without fiscal consolidation, debt trajectories will remain unsustainable, threatening macroeconomic stability. As interest rates rise, refinancing needs, and higher debt services costs could lead to financial stress, especially if economic growth falters. I saw something recently where they were asking people like what their stresses are right now in life. I think it was something along the lines of 60 or 70% say that it has to do with debt. And then, the other people were talking about like rent and yada, yada. But nearly all stresses right now across the board for people have to do with finances and the economy and how much money they're making, how much money they're not making, or being laid off, or interest rates being too high, or people, also like a weird thing as well, people wanting to like buy homes to kind of start their families. It's like a really weird mishmash of all these different things that are popping up right now. Also in the news, for those of you not looking at the screen, this is also part of the conversation of things that are flowing around. The International Monetary Fund is announcing nearly weekly now. It says high fiscal deficits and public debt pose risks for the U.S. and the global economy. This video is once again not to scare you. It's just more of a, this is what's in the news. This is what's floating around everywhere. The one of the issues is that the system runs on debt, and the debt is not debting right now because people are choosing to like try not to get into debt and trying to save money. But the problem is the cost of everything continues to go up, squeezing that money from people's bank accounts that they did have as a form of savings. So then they're forced to go into debt. If the U.S. falters, everywhere else falters. This is a common misconception that a lot of people, especially within crypto, have. We were talking about that before when it came to like all the BRICS countries and all the new current and yada yada, the thing that they're making. What people don't understand is that as much as you might not want the U.S. dollar to be in control anymore, the problem is that since 1945, its tentacles are on everything. Not some things. It is wrapped around the entire financial sector. So unless the U.S. decides to change their monetary policies in the course of a couple of years, things are going to be absolutely terrible. Terrible is the nice word for it. There's a lot of news like this right now. The news that we recently got is the International Monetary Fund told the Fed for August, do not lower interest rates, because they know that the moment that interest rates are lowered, inflation is going to pop up again. That's just the way that the interest rates work. That's just the way that the monetary system works, as more money ends up being printed. We know that a number of other larger countries are also printing money again because their economic woes have not ended, especially in China, from the entire Evergrande real estate collapse, which we were also just talking about, as it was also just recently in the news again. Yeah, there's a lot. There's so much. We're living through weird times right now as we're like seeing the crunch. I was chatting with one of my friends, and you don't think that you're living through history, and then you realize like all the economic repercussions of dropping the gold standard and allowing debt to run amok, allowing, to lower regulations to make sure that companies around the world can do whatever they want to make as much profit as they want, to take out enormous amounts of debt, for countries to be trillions of dollars into debt to one another, and they can't pay that debt off without printing more money. And the more money that you print, the more you devalue the currency. We're here. It's the reason why Bitcoin was created. But in my eyes, this is me going from a daily news perspective. Part of the major problem is that the everyday average person isn't paying attention to Bitcoin. They're so concerned and worried with the debt that they're in. The idea of even thinking about Bitcoin or trying to move over to a new financial standard is completely foreign to them. So Bitcoin is made to literally get away from the old system. But what happens when you can't get away from the old system because you've been in debt or are in debt for the next 10, 20, 30 years from the old system? It makes it very difficult to move over to the actual, what I think is at least partially the answer for the everyday person. But yeah, in the next couple of years, we're going to see something. And I don't think it's going to be what people want. Yeah, there's a lot of news that these banks, central banks, and even the International Monetary Fund, when the International Monetary Fund says that something is wrong, and when the people who print money in the US are like, hey, there's an issue, that means there's like a really bad problem going on. That's the money news. And yeah, let's move on. Also in what I thought was interesting news, and I wonder how it's going to play out. Bitcoin ETF issuer, they're called Van Eck, has teamed up with an asset manager called Invest to launch the first ever offerings of Bitcoin exposure for French retirement savings plans. You know how I feel about retirement. You know how I feel about saving. I love it. I love the idea of people actually saving, and that is mainly because I grew up in a world where people did not. People did not put money away. They did not invest. They did not contribute to their 401ks. They did not plan for the future. And I've seen many people retire or try to retire, and they have no money because they were also taking money out of their retirement plans. Do not take money out of your retirement plans. Do not withdraw. Do not get penalties. Make sure that you are contributing so that you actually have money when you decide to retire. Over the course of the last few years, we've actually seen a lot of interest, even from government sovereign plans, like money funds from different countries. Also, we've seen them allocating small but still significant amounts of money into Bitcoin ETFs, into a number of retirement plans. And that was the drama a couple of months ago when you saw, what was the name of that company? The company who didn't want to allocate anything to Bitcoin ETFs, and they weren't going to be, I forgot what they're called. That was the issue with that as well, because other companies were coming forward talking about how they were going to start buying Bitcoin ETFs to integrate them into their retirement plans, which is a huge, step forward, because it basically shows that they have trust in Bitcoin, because you would not allocate money into Bitcoin for a retirement plan. Because a lot of these things, if you've never entered into a retirement plan, you see that they have like 20, 30, 40 year time frames, so that when you do retire, you make the most of your money, basically expecting Bitcoin's price to go up. The initiative is facilitated by Van Eck's VBTC ETF, which is also recently launched on Australia's leading exchange. With a total value of $704 million, the VBTC ETF aims to provide French pension saving plans investors the opportunity to access digital assets as part of their retirement portfolio. It makes me, the word's not angry, it makes me kind of sad that so many normal people never got into Bitcoin. And even if you're listening to this or watching this right now, I give you a golf clap, but it's also like, we should, especially with like current economic woes, this is what I was saying a couple of months ago. I was asking if people talk to their friends and family about crypto. Do you try to, not in a like evangelical sense, like, are you going around, oh my gosh, you need like this kind of thing. But like, I always thought that by now we'd have so many more people into crypto, because Bitcoin, at least the idea of Bitcoin, is that it helps the public. It helps the everyday average person. We've seen it help people in Latin America and in Africa and in Southeast Asia who bought it years ago. The price goes up. These people are now able to live far more comfortable lives. And a lot of the narrative, once again, has shifted to this idea of the only way for people to access Bitcoin or have exposure to Bitcoin is through these ETFs. I'm not expecting pensioners to go out and go buy Bitcoin and stuff like that, or to try and learn what the system or the ecosystem is like. But I find it very weird that like we have so many people in the market, but it still seems like a very like niche kind of thing. I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this way. Like I'm digging through the news constantly every single day, looking at what's going on. And I still find it very, very odd that like we're not at 500 million people into crypto at this point. And I mean like normal people, like buying up Satoshis, like buying up things within the market. Especially as we got news about 3 or 4 days ago, for those of you who didn't see it, the whales, as usual, like whales is such like a broad term at this point, but whales in general, very rich people, very wealthy people, are buying up, I mean, enormous amounts of Bitcoin daily, every 24 hours. Like it's nonstop and has been for at least the last 2.5 years. And they've been looking at like the metrics for what you would call retail investors, everyday normal people, and they're not in the market. Like retail investors have still not re-entered or have not entered in general into the Bitcoin market, into the cryptocurrency space. Like crypto means almost absolutely nothing to them. Like they have no interest in it. They know nothing about it. They rush back in when prices are pumping, but like these are the kind of things that like if you want to retire from Bitcoin, like you would get into the market now. There's a huge difference between you buying crypto in 2017, 2022, 2024, and you buying or trying to buy some of it in the year 2038. Like you've missed the early bus at that point. So it's very nice to see that more and more retirement plans are popping up with this exposure to Bitcoin, or allowing people the chance to be able to have access to Bitcoin. I think this logically will increase when we have higher prices. If you have an $89,000 Bitcoin, of course, the hype begins to re-enter the market. You have a lot more people become interested. But the issue is that once again, Bitcoin is higher than it currently is right now, and therefore they get less bang for their buck. And the same thing will happen when Bitcoin is at 180,000. 245,000. It's people look back and go, could have got some, but then they also end up only getting like fragments of it, because once again, the average person cannot afford $70,000 for an entire Bitcoin. So I know that by the time Bitcoin's at $250,000, the only people who will still have access to buying huge, or even a full or a half a Bitcoin, will be people who are already rich, who are already wealthy. So I still hold out, I guess, a tiny bit of hope for Bitcoin in the future, for normal people to figure out what Bitcoin is. I was thinking about that earlier as well. I mean, I constantly have this stuff on my brain, on my mind. I was once again thinking about the idea of like in the future, and who has crypto, who has Bitcoin, like who has what, and like if we do go through like a severe economic turmoil issue situation, and Bitcoin like rises, I was going to say from the ashes, or just continues rising from where it currently is. It's such a weird paradox to think that only the people who are in the market right now will be able to like fully benefit from it. Isn't that weird to anyone else? I'm sure someone just said no, it's not weird to them at all, especially as but anyway, I find it rather odd, the idea that we can see actively in front of us the ETF inflows, the amount of money flowing into the cryptocurrency market, the complete disinterest from retail investors. If we get to a point, like I told you before, by the end of the year, where I'm expecting still ETF issuers to have 2 million, 2.5 million to 3 million Bitcoin. Think of it. Like think of if that happens this year in 2029, there's barely any Bitcoin left for billions of people. Like it's great if you're already holding crypto, but then like everyone else is also in this like predicament where they don't have, I don't know. I have very interesting thoughts on a lot of these things, and this is where I think that we're headed. At least this is the way that it logically seems. Anywho, yeah, we've heard a lot of stuff recently about retiring with Bitcoin, and there was that guy recently who was also in the news, one of the analysts who was going over, oh gosh, what was it? I think it was the issuance rate of Bitcoin falling every 4 years. It was the percentage of Bitcoin's deflation rate relative to the inflation rate of the US dollar and the devaluation of this was like a month and a half ago, and the devaluation of the US dollar. And he predicted that by the year, I'm pretty sure it was the year 2038, he said as well, 2038, he was expecting, I think, a $23 million Bitcoin. So in the article, he was proposing to people to own a tenth of a Bitcoin. And therefore, he was saying you'd still come out with $2.3 million in the future, at least securing you and your family's position as having, you know, a large amount of money. Let's not pretend that 2.3 million isn't a lot of money. I had that conversation with a lot of my friends. I don't know why I ask these questions. And I always ask, like, what could you do with $1 million? What could you do with 3 million? What could you do with 5 million? It's a weird question I always ask. And it's the idea that people have this weird perception that like $1 million isn't a lot of money. You watch stuff on Instagram, you watch stuff on TikTok, and you see these people showing these gigantic, massive 18-bedroom homes. And this was 1.7. And like we've become so desensitized to very large numbers. You don't realize that, I mean, this is also like, if you leave the US, for those of you who haven't left, I implore you, go travel. You will see that homes are like 180,000 in many other places. I mean, if you get a chance as well, watch one of those videos from CNBC about the $1 Italian homes, like all the people who've been moving there. There's a whole bunch of Americans who've like bought these $1 homes. They spend about 40,000 to renovate them. And these people have like 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom homes, like overlooking these like lakes and all these other things. And all together they put in like $52,000 into it. And they're like, I bought a home. I bought a huge house in this country. Like, I'm going to retire now. Because, you know, so much of the expectation is that like you can't really do anything. Even with like, so if you took $1 million, this is one of my friends' ideas. If you took $1 million and put it into dividend stocks, and those dividend stocks were giving you on average 4% return per year, that's $40,000. That's roughly around what, 3,500, somewhere around there per month. You can literally do anything that you want with that money as passive income. Like you're set, you're completely good. And then that only ends up doubling and tripling if once again, for my numbers, if you get to $3 million. If you have $3 million, 4% return, and you're making, was that $11,000 per month? Tell me what you can't do with $11,000 passively per month. A lot of people have this misconception, especially in crypto, that you need to, I got to make $18 million. I got to make $47 million. It's not worth it. It's like, no. Like you can do extremely well with $500,000 to $1 million. You just have to be flexible in what you want. If you're trying to show off to people and you want that house with a picket fence and, you know, 3 cars and all this other stuff, well, you're going to be broke. Like you need millions of dollars because you're trying to show off to people. If you're not trying to show off to people and you want to live a good life, you do not need $10 million. Anyway, got a bit off track there, but it's something that I'm passionate about. Like people like retiring early, leaving their jobs, making money, and all these other kinds of things. And people have a weird misconception about how much money they actually need to retire or have a good retirement. Anyway, that's the Bitcoin ETF retirement news. Got heavily off track there. Let's move on. Also okay, cool. All right. Ethereum developers have introduced another one, Ethereum improvement proposal called EIP 7732, which aims to overhaul the block validation process and speed up the blockchain. Ethereum is on a bagel roll so far this year. This is now the 8th or the 9th proposal that we've had in 2024 alone to speed up, to make better the Ethereum blockchain. There's nothing wrong with the proposals. It's more of a The people from Ethereum and the developers have a track record of announcing that they're going to do stuff, and then it ends up taking a very long time for the platform to have all this stuff. Once again, as I'm not a developer, I don't know how long it takes, but it's more of a, you can't keep saying that you're going to do something and then it either never happens or it takes years for it to actually take place. The proposal introduces significant changes to block validation to improve the blockchain security and performance by separating the process into consensus and to execution. EIP 7732 responds to the growing demand for efficiency on the Ethereum blockchain and follows Ethereum co-founder Vitalik Buterin's push for faster transaction confirmation times. And here's a tweet. I don't know what this thing is right here. It says epochs and slots all the way down. Okay. Ways to give Ethereum users faster transaction confirmation times. Cool. Awesome. I hope it gets done. I hope it actually takes place because they've been talking about a lot of stuff since the beginning of this year. Ways to make the blockchain faster and more efficient and give it more transactions per second and to take the load off of other blocks that are being produced and to stuff more into blocks and a lot of different proposals. Once again, nothing wrong with the proposals as long as they actually end up taking place. It is completely pointless to consistently announce that you're going to be doing something and then it takes 6 years for the things to actually roll out, especially with Ethereum ETFs and the amount of hype and energy around them right now. You gotta, you gotta give back. I don't know what I'm trying to say. That's the Ethereum has a brand new EIP 7732. Let's see if it actually ends up getting activated or actually ends up on the network. Moving along. Also in stupid news, the US SEC is abandoning their probe into stablecoin issuer Paxos, according to multiple reports. For those of you who don't remember, the SEC is incredibly corrupt. A number of years ago, when Binance became the #1 cryptocurrency exchange on the planet, and they still are, they partnered, I believe, with a company called Paxos, whatever, and Paxos was their printer, creator of their Binance US dollar, which incredibly quick became the second most used stable coin that was actually on the market. It was rivaling Tether. There's something happening behind the scenes for those of you who missed it as well. Tether is becoming like incredibly popular. Tether is minting their coin on top of the Telegram blockchain, and it's being used for social security in the Philippines. There's a lot of really weird stuff happening. So I assume there's some kind of a Game of Thronesy thing happening with stablecoins that we are just not aware of. Stablecoins move around $4 trillion per month through their chains. So I assume nearly everything that has happened to Binance and Changpeng Zhao was clearly something inside. This isn't a joke. This isn't a tinfoil hat thing. There's a lot of money at stake. That's why when Changpeng Zhao got in trouble, I was like, it's a little bit too on the nose. It's putting a hat on a hat, basically. So at the same exact time when the SEC was announcing that everything was a security and everything is terrible, and they told Binance to leave the US, and they said that Binance US, like the secondary company, was also doing something wrong. I believe that lawsuit has also just, I don't know what the heck is going on. They basically announced that Binance didn't have authority to issue BUSD and to give it to the American public. So they launched a probe into Paxos, basically stating you must be doing something wrong. You must be doing something incorrect. You have to be illegal in some sort of way. And now the terrible part is that one of the fragments of the terrible parts is that we keep getting this news that the US SEC is just basically launching lawsuits against companies and other things within the cryptocurrency space, and it presents as bad news. So that day, that week, that month, or maybe for years in the case of Ripple and XRP, the price of that project will go down. If you have 5 lawsuits against you from the SEC, Your price is not going to go up. But when these things get resolved, when the SEC steps away silently, they didn't make an announcement for this, basically saying, oh, like we were wrong. The general public doesn't know. So I know that people find news like this very boring, but no, it's a huge thing that the SEC keeps losing these lawsuits, that they keep stepping away from their probes, and that they're not finding anything. They're trying to regulate by enforcement and by force, as opposed to giving actual rules and regulations. 99% of the things that the SEC has done against other companies have failed. The problem is that especially years ago, a number of these smaller companies were taken to court by the SEC and they were forced to settle. If you're a brand new startup and you barely have any money and the SEC is trying to launch a $100 million lawsuit against you, these people pay up. They don't know what else to do. Like they're like, we're a brand new company. No one gave us rules and regulation. So years ago, the SEC and Gary Gensler on Twitter used to brag, they pleaded guilty. What else do? You can't. It's the same with the people from Ripple. They said that the current lawsuit has cost them $100 million. $100 million. How many companies have that amount of money to have a multi-year lawsuit against them? So the way that the U.S. system works in legal and in any other type of way, for those of you who don't know and never lived there, if you can't find a way out of a multi-year lawsuit or multi-year case against you, you have to plead guilty. It's a terrible system. The issue is now they're dealing with like some of like the biggest companies in the space. You're abandoning your probe? Why? That means you found nothing over the course of the last 2 years. You lied. You said that you found something. In order to launch a multi-million-dollar probe, you have to find something. You scare the public all the time. Why? For what? To get people out of the space, to get them to believe that something is wrong, and then nothing is ever actually found. Per news from Fortune, the SEC's decision to no longer pursue Paxos over its Binance US dollar stablecoin signals a win for the crypto industry, indicating that the regulator is no longer considering stablecoins as securities. No, they can't find anything. Who regulates the regulators? Why is the US system like this? Why is it so corrupt and no one steps in, no one does anything? Why are they constantly allowed? Imagine if these people had literally just released rules and regulation on the SEC website. 15 pages. You got to read through all of it. It says exactly what needs to be done. Instead of going after companies, trying to scare people, scaring these companies, getting any kind of innovation out of the space. You probably don't remember because if you weren't here for years, there were dozens of promising companies within the space who disappeared because they were sued by the SEC in 2018, 19, and 2020. They're gone. You talk about innovation and not having monopolies within the space. You know what does it? Having 12 other companies move into the space. So the SEC continues to lose their lawsuits. They continue to, they're like, you have to dig through the news. Of course, this wasn't popular news. You have to dig through the news to find the news that the SEC is no longer pursuing or going after a certain company. They don't release it as a press statement. Why would corrupt people announce that they were lying the entire time? Don't ever forget as well, this was about 6 months ago. There was a news story that there was a judge somewhere. I don't remember. It was definitely in the States, but what state I don't remember. She threw out one of the cases that the SEC had against some other company. She said, you guys lied. She said, like, everything you did was a complete lie. And the 3 lawyers who were representing the SEC, I think they all got disbarred or they all quit or like dropped from the case. Like they literally, she found in their documents that they had been fabricating and lying the entire, you can try and find it. Type in like SEC 3 lawyers, judge, throws out case. I'm sure any combination of words, you can definitely find it. She was like, you guys lied the entire time. And I think there was one person from the SEC who came forward and they were like, we are choosing to step down from this lawsuit. No, admit that you lied. Why are you so corrupt? What are you trying to prove? It's very frustrating. We can live in a completely different world, and it's just drenched in dirty corruption. I think that's going to do it for this video. Hope you've all enjoyed. Hope you all are having a great day. Hope you all are taking care of yourselves. Thank you all once again for watching, for liking the video, for commenting, for helping the algorithm and all that other kinds of stuff. And I will be most certainly talking to you all soon. See you.